What's up, Skeptics and Saints? My name's Nolan. I'm here with my good buddy, Skyler.
Hey, man. How's it going, Nolan?
Going good. We're going to talk today about Halloween. So if you ever wondered, like, should a Christian celebrate Halloween? It's got a lot of evil. Are there demons? Is there a thin space on Halloween night? Is it connected to Samhain from the ancient pagan Celtic cultures? And are demons coming through the veil on Halloween night to, like, consume your, golden retriever, whatever that is, your golden doodle, maybe by participating, you're actually opening a door to the real demonic. Like, those are real questions. I mean, not the golden doodle thing, but we're going to hit that today. So by the end of this episode, you're going to know what both the Garden Church really and Skeptics and Saints podcast has to say about Halloween. At the very end of this, Skyler, I want you to share what you do as a pastor and with your own family for Halloween.
Sure.
Like, do you celebrate? Are you like at home, like close the doors, keep the demons out? Or are you out there dancing with the demons? Like, I really want to know that. I'm going to share mine. Yeah. I'm going to share what our family does. And there might even be some differences. Who knows? So talking all things Halloween, you're going to find out theological training, background, Bible. We're going to get into church history, really the ancient world. What did the ancient Christians do with this? So we're going to go there. All right. So first question for you, just before we get into all that, is like, do you have a favorite Halloween candy? Or just candy if you don't celebrate Halloween?
Honestly, this crosses all holidays, and it's Reese's. All, Reese's Pieces, the cakes, all of it, man. Reese's through and through. What about you?
I love a Snickers, and I do like Reese's. I would never get mad finding one of those warheads in the candy bag as a kid. I love warheads. You guys know what those are? Those are still a thing. Super
they
sour.
suck your cheeks inward.
Well, all right. So Halloween candy. Hey, the question, I guess, is why does this stir up so much controversy, right? And to me, it's a lot of things. I remember being a kid. So my mom had a Catholic background. And then after being Catholic, at one point, she got really excited about Jesus at a revival that was charismatic in nature. So like the holiness movement. And so my mom was actually pretty spooked out by Halloween when I was real little. Like, at least in my experience, we didn't attend a lot of church, but like, Halloween was a no-go for a few years there. And so I remember feeling kind of left out as a kid, like I'm not really understanding why. Like, I guess there's demons out there, but we didn't get to do it. And so, I remember a couple of years, my wife had a similar experience that her parents were deeply involved in church, and their church was like, we're not doing Halloween. Now, we will do trunk or treat, though. And so you got the candy, you hung out with the Christians, but like the world and church were very separate for her. And so there was no Halloween. And I think part of the reason that it becomes so controversial is some of the darkness, the dark elements. My kids and I just did a train thing where we went to Scottsdale and got on these little trains and drove around for my nephew's birthday. And I didn't know they did Halloween there. Like, I didn't know there was any characters or anything like that. Well, on this train, they had set up like a full cemetery, and it was like creeptastic. And I'll say, like, I've raised my kids to be pretty tough. Like, we don't do fear in the Jaden home. Like, Jadens aren't in danger. Jadens are dangerous. That's like that big thing in my home. So even when they were little, we'd go to Home Depot and you'd see the big, spooky, like sick, 10-foot tall skeleton dude, or like the goblin dude. The kids would be like, oh no. I'd be like, dude, go give him a high five. Like, go take that dude on. They'd be like, we're going to get him, like push him. So my kids are tough as nails. They're not really afraid of anything, but my nephew's scared, and like, he's little. And here's how I feel about it in that moment. Like, why do you got to do that? Like, why does it have to be so dark? And so there is a lot of like death. There is a lot of gore, and not just a little bit. Like, sometimes it's way over the line, even in a secular context. So one of our staff members was sharing with me on the plane. We just did a big conference, and she was sharing with us that down the street from her house, they have like nasty dead baby stuff all over the yard.
Yeah.
Like blood, gore. Dude, it's wild out there. And so I think sometimes with Halloween, Christians go like, that celebration of violence, that celebration of death feels dark and wrong. It's not just like, hey, even at the garden, we use skulls to represent like the beauty of death to life. Like God is actually dry bones in the Bible being pieced back together. This is another level of like, no, we just like death. And so I think that's where Christians start to go, what is wrong with, like, there's something wrong with Halloween. All right. So with that, how should we think about, before we dive into like, should we celebrate Halloween particularly? How should we think and respond to holidays in general? Actually, it would be really helpful for me if you want to take a minute, Skyler, and talk to me about, if we can jump ahead, like,
yeah, you bet.
How did the ancient Christians deal with holidays?
Yeah, that's so good. And I would say, I mean, you can look this up on your own, but with a lot of the holidays that were connected to the Roman Empire, I mean, now Christianity was bigger than just the Roman Empire. They're all over the place. But by and large, in the first couple of centuries, that's where it's concentrated. In most of the Roman festivals, holidays, they weren't just civic events. They were actually, they would have fun and they would do wild things. But they were primarily, or even at the end, they were built around the honor and the worship of Roman gods, or and oftentimes the emperor cult. And so you'd worship and honor the emperor, and you would literally offer sacrifices to a variety of degrees to these deities or to a human being. And so Christians who were invited to these parties, because you think there's very communal focus, everyone's going to these in the cities. And so Christians had to make a choice. I can go there, but I'm not just eating. I can go there, but I'm not just talking. I could go there, but and go on the list, because I have to make a decision. Am I going to tip my hat to the worship of the emperor or to Zeus or to some of these other gods, or am I not going to go? And by and large, many of the Christians, because of their own devotion to Jesus, they said, I'm not going. And so because of that, you begin to see, as you walk through church history, a lot of the Christians were seen as antisocial. And it wasn't because they just didn't like the Romans. It wasn't because they didn't like these events. It's because they couldn't compromise on their loyalty to Jesus because of these events. And so I would say, when you look at holidays today, dude, we're not offering a sacrifice to some deity. We're not putting a human being on a pedestal and worshiping them. Now, if you are, for whatever holiday you find yourself in, don't engage.
Do not invite me.
Yeah, embrace the ancient faith and practice like they did, and don't go be antisocial. But I think most of the holidays that we're engaged in and what the ancient Christians were engaged in are on different worlds. You know what I mean? So
don't invite me to your Zeus party where you're gonna like sacrifice a kid or something. I know they didn't quite do that, but like if you're gonna invite me to worship your pagan deities, I'm just full blown out. Yeah. But that is helpful context that Christians were considered antisocial. I think you've shared this, and I don't know if I missed it, but that there were even emperors who blamed Christians for some of the plagues or natural disasters because Christians weren't worshiping their gods at these holiday festivals. Is that right?
Yeah. So there's a church historian, Henry Chadwick. He wrote a really good book called The Early Church, in case you're wondering. And he just kind of walks through the centuries of Christianity. But one of the things he says, and it's super fascinating, it's that the Roman Empire, when things started going wrong in the Roman Empire, so whether there's like famines or floods or droughts, whatever it may have been, the Romans actually began to blame the Christians because they, as Romans, were actually tolerating their rebellion, their atheism, as they kind of saw it, because they weren't worshiping the Roman gods.
You're saying the Romans called Christians atheists?
They were total atheists because they weren't worshiping the all of the gods or honoring the emperor, and so they literally just called them, they were atheists in Roman eyes. So their non-participation in these events was seen as tolerance from the Roman tolerance. And so the Romans thought the gods are being mad at us, so they're punishing us. And so there's spurts throughout the Roman history where they would actually go after Christians. Like Tertullian said that when he kind of said this in a kind of a tongue-in-cheek way, that whenever one of the river rises or another river, it kind of dries up, the Romans' attitude was to the lions. You know what I mean? The Christians need to go to the lions, right? So just wild,
bro. So should we go to the lions for Halloween? That's my question. Wow. Well, let me give a framework here. So I'll just share. I think I've given some thought to how to correlate American holidays, whether that's Christmas, Easter, 4th of July, St. Patrick's Day, Thanksgiving, like Halloween, and how those are American holidays like those correlate to and how they compare to the Roman holidays. So what Skyler's saying is the Christians in the first century were willing even to die so as not to participate in Roman holidays because there was idol worship, because there was false god worship going on. Do we need to take that posture? And so let's compare Roman holidays to American holidays to really ask that question. So I'm going to offer you 3 tiers. I think American holidays all fit into 3 tiers. Tier 1 is a spiritual holiday. Spiritual. 2 is meaningful. And 3 is communal. Spiritual, meaningful, communal. And so a spiritual holiday means this is a holiday where people actually believe in something spiritual behind it. They are worshiping God through it. They are doing some kind of sacred assembly, sacred participation in a real religious holiday. That would include things like this. Christmas for Christians. Let's say Christians would consider Christmas a spiritual holiday. Why? We're celebrating the incarnation of the Lord Jesus. So that is spiritual. We actually believe there is a God and his name is Jesus, and he came to earth and lived and ultimately died. So we're celebrating him on the day. That's not just a fun festival where there's a Santa Claus. On Christmas, when we participate, we're not really like, I mean, you could do Santa, I guess, if you want to like dress up in red or like go high five a dude at the mall. But what we're doing for our religious participation in Christmas is we're celebrating the birth of Christ. You know, that's what we're going to do when we do candlelight service, this December. We're going to have a zillion services and we're going to celebrate King Jesus. I would also include for Christians, Easter. Easter is a spiritual holiday. I would include,
Pentecost Sunday, man.
What's that?
Pentecost Sunday.
Pentecost Sunday.
Yeah.
Tight.
What holiday is that?
That's
not on your calendar.
Let's stick to Skyler's introducing the possibility of Pentecost Sunday for you. I'd be down with that. However, like corporate American religious holidays. All right. I don't think there's, let's just stop right there for now because those are the most spiritual holidays for us. Number 2 would be meaningful. This is stuff like 4th of July. And I'll even get nuanced with this, that the 4th of July isn't a spiritual holiday. There's no God or deity or supernatural element to it, but it's a meaningful holiday nonetheless. Why? Because we're celebrating independence from the British, right? Like we established the country, the Constitution. You've got the Declaration of Independence, 1776. Like we are celebrating like, yo, we don't speak with no British accent. What is a kilometer, bro? Like that's what we're celebrating, America. However, I will say that this is a meaningful holiday or meaningful celebration for really most people who are conservative, right? For those today who are far left, they wouldn't even count the meaning. It's like, man, I just like fireworks. So I would actually argue those who are far left wouldn't even say that it's a super meaningful holiday. They'd probably say, hey, look, no, we took the land from the natives in the first place, so we should give the land back. You know, folks in that category, a lot of them actually wouldn't consider it a very meaningful and actually a problematic holiday. And so if they do celebrate it, it's going like, well, I just like to drink beer and light off fireworks. And so that would move for them 4th of July down to a 3rd tier, which is simply communal. Like I just do this to drink beer, hang out, have fun. Like I'm just wearing red, white, and blue for the kicks and giggles. I'm not about it. But I would say for a lot of people who are maybe a little more conservative or just patriotic or just love America, that's meaningful. I think there are probably other examples of this. Like let's take the secular perspective of Thanksgiving. I, as a Christian, would put Thanksgiving as a spiritual holiday because I have someone to thank, and his name is Yahweh. Like I'm going to thank God for what he's done. But the secular person, I think, categorizes this differently. They would bring it down to meaningful. Like I don't think God, but I just think other people. It's not spiritual, but I just think other people. Okay, well, then they would consider it a meaningful holiday. Now, let's go down to tier 3. These holidays would be things like St. Patrick's Day. Nobody believes in leprechauns. I almost said replicons, and Miguel was like, "What's a replicon, bro?" You know, producer Miguel back there, like if there's replicons, that sounds like straight Transformers action. I don't know. Anyway, so leprechauns are not a thing. I do remember being a little kid, and like if there was like 5 minutes where I did believe in leprechauns. Our teacher had us made like a trap for leprechauns, dude.
That's awesome.
And I was like actually disappointed to have my dad be like, "Dude, you know leprechauns are like not a thing." I was like, "What? I thought there was little dudes." And so that's fake. So we would then put that in category 3. Like there is no supernatural.
If you just ruined somebody's entire life over this.
Yeah, we are going to expose today Santa Claus, the Easter Bunny, and the leprechauns.
Oh, man.
Now, maybe if you're Irish, you understand who's, and as Catholic, you're like, no, St. Patty was a G, and so you put it up to meaningful. Well, God bless you. But like for 99% of the population, nobody cares about the meaning behind St. Patrick's Day. It's just an excuse to wear green, goof around at work, pinch somebody, and I don't know, drink beer, eat some delicious Irish food, but like it's just communal. It's entertainment, fun based. Okay. Other holidays, I think for the secular person, Christmas is this. It's just fun. Like it's materialism. There's nothing meaningful or spiritual. Other holidays, what are some other holidays we might put in just the fun category or the communal category?
That's a good question. I don't know. It's hard to identify a lot of those. I'm not sure, man. I'm drawing a blank on other holidays. I know they're there. I mean, I guess you
put Easter in that category for the non-Christian too. They don't believe in resurrection. It's like about bunnies.
Yeah, I mean, you got a lot of like holidays that are created after people.
Yeah.
And I don't,
Columbus Day.
Columbus Day. You got Martin Luther King Day. You got
Martin Luther King would be a good example of tier 2. It's meaningful, but not spiritual, right? Yeah. So we'll just leave it there. But here's what I actually believe about Halloween: that if we were to use this grid, and I think everyone would probably get here who's watching this, that for 99% of people, I'm not asking the question, can someone think of this as spiritual, or can someone think of this as meaningful? I'm asking the question, what does 99% of the population consider Halloween? I would argue that 99% of human beings, secular, Christian, non-Christian, Buddhist, like whatever, here in Arizona, look at Halloween as merely a communal holiday. There is nobody out there, and if I would argue there's nobody other than like 0.00001% of human beings in the valley who are looking at Halloween like anything other than just fun. Like it's about candy, it's about putting spooky vibes out there, it's about fall, it's about hanging out with neighbors, it's about like literally in Verado, what people do is they put a bunch of TVs. I think this is true in Marley Park too, but a bunch of TVs out to watch the baseball game, the World Series, and then people are hanging out in their front porch, and then there's spooky stuff everywhere, and they're handing candy out to kids because it's cute and fun, and you like to see your kids dressed up as Spider-Man or whatever, and it's fun. Now, I would say that, like I said, maybe 0.0001%, because like there's all this stuff on TikTok and Instagram and YouTube. Like there are people out there doing witch seances and like covens and like the occult and tarot cards, and I'm like, show me those people. And by the way, the 0.001% of people doing that, crystals, tarot cards, so on and so forth, they're doing that every day of the year anyways. It's not because it's Halloween. Also, we'll talk about this in the Bible portion of it, but maybe if I can hit it right now, there's nothing in the Bible that says October 31st has any spiritual significance to it. Some people would go back to the Samhain. It's actually spelled Samhain. But Samhain, like I did a whole episode on this at like my previous church, but Samhain is this whole idea of, it's like a Celtic pagan holiday that was like aligned. I think it wasn't October 31st. It must have been like a slightly different day, but they actually believe that the veil between this reality and the darkness and the demons like thinned on that night. And so they would do human sacrifice. It's argued that maybe the human sacrifice is an embellishment, but some people believe they did human sacrifice. They would have a big festival and they would expect the undead and the demons to like come out then. The reality though is that that holiday is not at all celebrated, nor is it continued today. Like nobody is celebrating that. Nobody believes that. And it's actually really debatable whether Halloween is the contemporary version of that. There's a lot of like segments of history that would cast doubt on that. For instance, like the part of how that actually transitioned was the Catholic Church would pick pagan holidays like Christmas, Saturnalia, and they would like overlap the Catholic holiday. And part of that was like, you guys want to celebrate something, you're going to celebrate Christ. You want to celebrate something, you're going to celebrate the virgin birth, but you're not going to celebrate these other things. So if you wanted to make a connection there, it's actually a disconnect, not a connection. The Catholic Church was trying to dominate the pagan world, and they did that by like covering up their holidays. So if anything, I think history bears out that that's a disconnecting, not a connection. Now, when it comes to Halloween, I guess my real point is that nobody's doing that. Like your neighbor's not doing that. You go talk to your neighbors. If you haven't talked to your neighbors and you don't know whether they're doing that, then I would argue the issue here is actually you're not a missional Christian. Like you don't even know what your neighbors believe. I know all of my neighbors. All of them. And I actually like most of them. No, all of them. Getting to know my neighbors, I'm like, oh, these people don't believe in anything if they're not a Christian. Now, some of them are Christian. Others of them, they believe in nothing. And I've asked them, like, what do you believe about Halloween? Like, I love Snickers. Me too, bro. Warheads? No? Oh, okay. Too sour? Well, that's what I would say most people look at Halloween as. Fun, candy, communal. And it's kind of dope, fun, spooky vibes. So it's not spiritual. It's not meaningful. It's simply communal. Now, with that is where I would say, to bring this all back together, there is a strong disconnect and discontinuity between the way the early first century Christians resisted the pagan holidays of Rome and our participation or non-participation in Halloween and other holidays like that today. I think we're comparing apples to oranges there. I want to pose to you, one, do you agree with that? And then two, and this isn't yet me making a case that you should participate, because I think there are some things to consider there. Yeah. But before I do make that case or address that, to ask you, Skyler, like, would you agree with that this is not a parallel to the first century? And number two, what, if anything, would be a good comparison? So what I mean is, in the first century, Christians were willing to even be impaled or eaten by animals in order to resist the Roman pagan worship. What would be a good comparison? For me, I would say Christians, to go back to the framework, should never participate in tier 1 holidays, spiritual holidays that are not explicitly Christian. So like, Ramadan, Christians shouldn't celebrate it. I would have some dotted line, even hesitation in celebrating certain Jewish holidays, especially ones that are not found in the Bible. Like, why would I participate in that? Like, I have the fulfillment in the Messiah, Jesus. Paul talks about that in Galatians. Let me think of some other examples, like other religious, anything to do with the occult. Like genuinely, let's say Halloween even. If I did meet one of the 0.001 percenters who was like, dude, I'm doing tarot cards tonight and we're going to talk to my dead grandma, I'd be like, full stop, I'm out. Dude, I don't do demons, dog. Like, if you want to dress up like Spider-Man and go do something fun with the kids, like, we can talk about that, but I'm not doing tarot cards. That is full-blown demonic. I think Christians can never participate in spiritual holidays and should be willing to die for that if that spiritual holiday is not explicitly Christian, if that makes sense. Yeah. So do you agree that there is a discontinuity between Halloween, St. Patty's Day, and the Roman holidays, and the way that we should interact with that?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I don't know. I mean, well, 100%, right? I mean, we got 2,000 years of a gap between that, and Halloween's a relatively new-ish holiday. So I think for most people, like you pointed out, I think if you were to just poll a majority of people, why do you celebrate candy? It's going to be two things: kids and candy. You know, I think those
Well
are the
put.
two reasons that people are genuinely approaching candy. And I think maybe from a person who's not coming at this from a faith position, they would probably look at us as overreacting to a lot of this. I think a lot of it is just a dramatic way of leaning into this sort of fun festivity that arguably is pretty dark. A lot of that and how people go. And I'm not down. You know, there's part of that like I'm not down with that. But yeah, I don't think it's the same thing. When I go, if I'm walking down the street with my kids to grab candy or get candy, not grab, to be given candy,
Take
candy,
steal the candy.
Yeah, I'm not doing that.
Now you really are sinning on Halloween.
There you go. But I'm not dropping a quarter in a temple to some other god, right? Like I am not having to say a prayer to the father of the household that I'm going to get the candy.
Dang.
So I'm not doing those kind of things. I'm not having to compromise in my faith and my allegiance to Jesus. And I think where you do encounter any holiday where it is a legitimate compromising of your allegiance to Jesus, you need to evaluate that.
Yeah.
Because that's not good. And we should actually, I don't know if we have time for that, but we should even back up and go beyond holidays. Are there things in our life that actually call to the carpet our allegiance to Jesus and we compromise on? And there's all kinds of things. I think a lot of people are super willing on both sides of the political spectrum where these are areas where we willingly throw out biblical principles and commands of Christ in the name of a party, regardless of where you're at.
That's good, bro.
And that's concerning to me on all the political landscape. You know what I mean? So there are aspects where, you know, we should evaluate, is this legitimately, has it been bumped up to a spiritual level where it's calling us to worship something else other than Christ? And if that's the case, then, you know, like we really need to rethink our engagement in that area. And I would say, yeah, we shouldn't do that. The early Christians were really serious that there's that compromise that you make in your faith in Christ is doing something deeper than what you may not even be realizing at that moment. You keep going in that direction, and you come to the point where you go, how did I get to this point?
I'm curious what you'll say to this, but like maybe a good example would be like a holiday, a celebration that compromises the faith, but today you're pressured to do it, would be to attend a gay wedding. I'm a throwdown. I think that as a believer, I could never attend a gay wedding. And dude, I say that as like, some people think I'm like out there, like some kind of MAGA dude or something. Dude, I have siblings. I have cousins. Like I'm from Portland, bro. Like people in Arizona probably know people, but I think like a couple approached me this Sunday who was like upset because I addressed Marxism and critical theory and queer theory, and they were pretty. They were, to their credit, they actually opened up to dialogue, but they were there to argue, and so to their credit, they heard me out, and vice versa, and we had a good dialogue. But I'm being accused of being like anti all these like alternative lifestyles. And I'm like, no, I'm just preaching the Bible, bro. And when it comes to like my experience, like people I love are gay or say that they're gay. People I love are trans, like people in my family, dude. And so this isn't theory to me. This isn't like clickbait Christianity. This is, I'm invited and have been invited to gay weddings and declined. And I want the relationship, bro. Want the relationship. So this is not like playing church games. This isn't getting clicks and likes. This isn't trying to be controversial. This is like, you are being invited to these. I've been invited to them. And I have to simultaneously be like, bro, you know I love you. Like, I want to like stay friends. I would be compromising my faith, because to attend a wedding like that is like actually affirming something that, like, I love you, I love your partner, like we want to hang with you, but at this juncture, I'm gonna respectfully decline and like wish you well, you know. So that's real for me. I don't know if you want to push back on that, but like that just coming to mind for me right now. Like, you're gonna have to feed me to the lions.
Yeah.
And that's going to be something that our culture looks at. It's like, well, then you're a bigot, you're dangerous, you hate these people, you want them dead. I'm like, no, I don't.
Yeah.
Like, no, I don't. And don't place that on me, you know, like, and it's funny because it's the same Christians who don't know anyone who's gay, don't know anyone. And meanwhile, my family's this, and I'm getting attacked. Maybe I'm just going off the rails here. But for me, that's a better parallel. That's a better parallel.
Yeah. And I think, I guess shifting a little bit,
reeling us back for a moment there, Pastor Nolan.
Talk more about holidays and whatnot. But if you step outside of an American context, things look radically different. And holidays, like when we're talking about some of these things, honestly, most of our holidays are driven more by consumerism and materialism. And, we're tipping our hat to a lot of those kind of things that, like, think about that. Like, we're discipling our souls and our kids and our families to these things. So, but when we step out of our context, like, there was a pastor in Mexico, and we were walking around, and it was kind of the Day of the Dead time. And
this is good, bro.
You're seeing a lot of genuinely dark things. And I asked him, hey, around this time when someone gives their life to Christ, do you have to, like, how do you address this in their life? And he goes, I have to help them unlearn a lot of the bad theology that they have inherited their whole life. And there's a legitimate, like, non-participation in that, not because they think, oh, this is just kind of a traditional thing. This isn't meaningful. This is deeply spiritual.
Yes, right.
And as a result, there's a lot of believers in, Mexico and other places like Haiti or places in Africa where the holiday is far more deep and demonic than just a simple celebration. You know what I mean? And some of those, like, some of what we're talking about has legitimate teeth outside of our context, where I would say this conversation may look a little bit different if we were somewhere else. You know what I mean?
And I know we're going to break the third wall or whatever here, but if I can ask future Pastor Miguel, who's producing us right now, is that pretty fair? Like, so Day of the Dead, that's actually a spiritual holiday where they believe that folks who embrace that believe it's a cultural holiday, but it's actually spiritual. That my understanding is you can talk to your dead ancestors, or you can make offerings to them, show love to them, that they arrive on that night. And is that true?
Yeah, so they have an altar and they put their favorite things.
It's an altar. They call it an altar. They put the person who's deceased, sadly, on this altar. And so, and that's mostly, is that just Hispanic? Mexico. Not South America, just Mexico.
Nah, it's Mexico.
Okay, and do you know the history on that?
No, but what I can tell you, I don't know the history of it, but I can tell you that a lot of Catholics practice it.
It's Catholic. It's syncretism. Syncretism is an important word. It's where you blend one faith belief with another faith's belief. So, like, this is like, I'm an Islamic Christian, I'm a Buddhist Christian, I'm gonna embrace Day of the Dead and also be Catholic, right? So that's a problem.
So it's a Aztec tradition.
It's Aztec.
And it evolved to the Spanish conquistador.
Yes.
Merged the idea of the ritual of the Aztec and the Catholic holiday of All Saints Day.
Super helpful. We need to make you like Rogan's producer, a little extra camera back there, dude. I need that. Actually, next episode. For real. So he's our research guy, like grok. Google. But yeah, man, I think that's a really helpful comparison, Skyler. And I'm not trying to like we love the Hispanic community. Like, we have a ton of people, Miguel included, like, who from a Hispanic Mexican, he's Salvadorian. Like, I don't want to demean a culture, but I do want to like say and affirm what Skyler's saying, that like as believers, we got to be thinking Christians, and we got to like ask like, hey, if something's spiritual and not Christian, like we got to bail out on that. And so I'm throwing both of those in there.
Yeah, and I'll jump in. Like that was me when I was down in Mexico chatting with Juan. This was me genuinely asking him, like, what do you do in engagement? And that was his answer. You know what I mean? Like, so this isn't coming from some, white pasty dude, just kind of coming up with a response. This was somebody who is deeply wrestling through this question here.
I'll make myself pasty too. I'm not actually Hispanic. I'm Asian. But question for both of you guys: when it comes to Day of the Dead, when is that? You know what does it fall on a certain, like, is it parallel to Halloween? Like, when is it? We got our research expert. 1st and 2nd. November 1st. Okay, so it's close by. So I'm betting they're trying to like bleed it all together with even the Halloween vibes.
And for context, since we're doing this, remember I told you that Halloween is an American holiday.
Yes.
This is why those like apostolic Pentecostal churches that are like, no, we got nothing to do with it.
They see because
they see it the same. It's the same thing.
They're bleeding those two together. That's helpful. Yeah, that's an interesting factor in all of it. I think Americans are just goofing around with secularism. And so when it comes to communal holidays, tier 3, communal holidays, I think it's honestly in most cases pretty similar to like a baseball game. Nobody believes that there's actually a great rattlesnake in the sky when they go to a Diamondbacks game, right? Like you're going there to have fun, to connect with your friends, and to just goof around with like logos and entertainment. And I think that's kind of what's going on with Halloween. But let's pull the cat out of the bag. I want to hit a few things that do concern me with Halloween. So again, we're going to close this out with what we do. And I'm going to have you walk us through some Bible verses, some 2 particular key passages that will help us think through how to deal with the fact that not every Christian engages with this the same way. Sound good?
Yep, sounds good.
But I want to attack some things with Halloween. Can I just say it? Like, look, I'm actually making a case at this point that it is not necessarily sin or unbiblical to participate in Halloween. Like, I don't think you can say that. I think if it was explicitly spiritual, then yes, it's out. But since it's communal, it's like doing St. Patty's Day. The problem I have with Halloween, though, is people, and I'm not saying that like, if you know me well and if you know the garden, like we're okay with hardcore branding. Like we had a skull in our last series branding to communicate something important, right? To communicate sometimes we're doing it to represent the death to life. We take it from Ezekiel 37, that God brought dry bones and he made an army out of them. There's a death to life theme all throughout the Old Testament, New Testament. Same thing with this Apocalypse Now logo. This guy's like scary, looks like a skull guy. And the point is like, dude, we're actually entering a season of danger. And so I think there's place for like death represented in art in a way that like communicates something important and powerful and even biblical. However, I think what happens on Halloween is people do crazy stuff. Going back to what I said earlier, like dead baby stuff. That is whack, bro. And if you're a believer, like fall back from creeptastic, very disgusting, very vulgar. Like Christians should be salt and light. And if you're going to participate in Halloween, like I am in fact saying, I don't think that's a sin, but the way you do it shouldn't haunt people and make darkness look awesome. There's a big difference there. And I think if you're doing disgusting things, now I would venture to guess that almost no Christians are doing that. But just in case, like I would really encourage you to think critically about your decorations. I would encourage you to think critically about whether you're bringing your kids over to some of that stuff. Honestly, some of you guys with little kids, like it is a spooky holiday. I wouldn't take my kids to a scary roller coaster. I wouldn't take my kids to a scary, I don't know, like there's just thought there. Like every parent's got to decide what movies their kids could watch. You got to think about that, bro. Like some of that stuff is whack. And if we're going to do Halloween, do it in a way that's like fall festival vibes. Do it in a way that's like fun, pumpkins. I carved some jack-o'-lanterns and we made some cute faces. Like those kinds of things are the cool parts of Halloween that are fun. I think it's a misunderstanding theologically to think that like I had a pumpkin and now a demon jumped on me. Like that's superstition. That's bad theology, right?
Wow.
But and I don't think you're getting a demon if you put a big giant skeleton in your yard. I would just really consider like how that affects families and whether you're actually glorifying death in a way that's really just grotesque and immature, right? So that's some of the concerns I have with it. And I would love to see a day when there's so many believers across the United States of America, but at least here in the West Valley, that it's like you walk around on Halloween and it's tame. You walk around on a Halloween and it actually feels holy even. Like you walk around on Halloween and it's a lot of fun and a lot of cool things and little princesses and little soldiers and little, awesome outfits, but zero demons and zero, death and zero like weirdness. So falling back from some of that, again, I'm not saying all spooky is evil. I'm not saying some of that can't be fun or even cute, but like, I don't know. Maybe I'm just overboard on that. I think people should chill on like putting, like if you're a believer and you have a cemetery out there, like I'm not really about that, you know?
Yeah. Well, avoid your house.
Yeah. Shame on you. I like walk by like spraying holy water on you or something, anointing it with oil.
I would say because that is in our culture, there's kind of an opportunity here where you're going to see a bunch of, dark, dead, elevating kind of things in people's yards. There's just a question like, what do you do with death? What do you think about death? And here's an opportunity that you as a Christian can have with your neighbors that, you can ask them about what their thought of death is. There's weird things like people put ghosts or whatever. You can even ask them about the spiritual world. Do you think that's real? Like,
and when they say no.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are wondering
about good, bro.
That, and you can have an open door this season to enter in these conversations. And even if they say no, now you know, right?
That's a great thing. Like I've seen pastors do Q&As on zombies and mummies, and I think that stuff is kind of fun because what you get to do is like, hey, in our culture, there's this felt need for interaction with death. Like people die. In America, you might even argue that the closest most people get to death most often is Halloween because we have such advanced medicine. You live longer here. Like in the third world, you're seeing death all the time. But here, Halloween creates an open door. So there is a redemptive element to the fact that there's some stuff that is sordid or feels grotesque. But really, it's like, hey, do you believe there are poltergeists? Well, like, no. Hey, do you believe in anything spiritual? Like sometimes I wonder, Yeah. And there's a conversation starter. All right, Skyler. So Christians do disagree. I'm suggesting that it is not necessarily a sin to participate in Halloween. I don't think candy's a sin. I just think it's a communal holiday. If you're doing seances, that's out. Here's a rule of thumb, actually, just to say it. Anything you wouldn't do on any other day than Halloween, don't do on Halloween. Anything you would do if it weren't Halloween, you can do on Halloween. So like if you're going to talk about my kid is going to dress up, like my daughter's going to dress up like Moana, like would you do that if it's September 23rd? Yes, I would. Then it's probably okay to do it on Halloween. Would you let your kid like play with tarot cards and dress up like a half dead, like zombie? Like, nope, wouldn't do it. So don't do it on Halloween. Like, don't do that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Or here's maybe more real for most of us is like, would you get blackout drunk on September 23rd? No, then you can't do that on Halloween. Chill out on that. Okay, so back to you. Christians are going to differ on this. Some Christians in good faith won't be able to go do it.
Yeah.
I want to honor that. Some Christians are going to go out and like, my kids are just dressing up like princesses. We're going to walk around this neighborhood. We're going to connect with our neighbors. It's a great opportunity. We're going to pal around, talk about the game, give some high fives, So Christians then will differ. Do we have a church split? Do we start churches that are only pro Halloween and churches that are non-Halloween so that they don't have to interact with each other because one's compromised, one's not? Like, how should Christians deal with that biblically? Theologian Professor Skyler.
Wow. That is so loaded. All right. So
this calls for the Bible, kids.
Yeah, here we go. You got your Bibles. Turn to 1 Corinthians chapter 8. No, I honestly think what has been most helpful for me, thinking through a lot of these topics, Halloween specifically, but in general, is 1 Corinthians 8 and 1 Corinthians 10, because Paul is dealing with something that actually is really controversial, that needs pastoral advice and guidance. And there's actually two issues if you dig into it, right? It all comes down to meat sacrificed to idols. And there's one part that Paul speaks into where it's meat in a temple that's been offered to a demon, right? Paul's not messing around. These aren't Roman gods. These are demons, right?
That's good.
So there's meat and you're invited to go to these parties in the temple. Is that okay? Paul says no, right? And he says, like, these idols, guys, get with the program. They're just wood and stone. They're not anything. And he picks up kind of the Isaiah and how Isaiah describes these and mocking the nations. But these aren't things. They're wood. And so look at the things in the lawn. That's plastic. It's plastic. It's candy. It's not anything. But then Paul goes a little bit deeper, and he acknowledges the fact that there are spiritual entities that do exist.
It's good, dude.
And he says when it comes to things that are overtly demonic and worshiping in that, he goes, you don't want to engage in that because there may be something there when you're entering into that kind of worship environment, right? I don't think Halloween's that. But as he kind of unpacks that, so that's one context. The other context is like, because most of the meat would end up going into the meat market and people would pick it up and then cook it at home and things like that. And so Paul talks about, what about the context where somebody's inviting you over to their house to eat meat with them, which is a big deal, right? Like you think this is they pulled out their very, very best for you to invite you over to their house. And they invite you over, and the question may pop into your brain, well, was this offered in the temple before it showed up on my plate? Is it okay? And Paul says, go ahead and eat whatever they put in front of you. But if they bring up that this was offered in the temple, don't do it. Don't do it. It's not worth it, because what that's going to do for them is they're acknowledging that this was actually an object of worship, and now you are not just eating the meat, you're actually participating in the worship of whatever was done there. And so Paul, what he does is he paints two different contexts: one where you go to a temple to eat the meat, and one where you go to a home and eat the meat. And one, he says, this is in a house, so go for it. You know what I mean? You're building bridges with these Gentiles in the neighborhood. Over here, it's just like, this just crosses the line. It entered the spiritual tier. Don't even go for it, because you actually might put yourself in a spiritually compromised position that is dangerous for your own soul. Don't do that, right? But what I love about all of that is Paul, he's really concerned about two things. He's concerned about Christians whose spiritual maturity is not at a place where they can handle that. And so Paul talks in both chapter 8 and chapter 10 about making sure how we are doing what we're doing, that we're not putting stumbling blocks in their faith.
Wow.
So if you were to, if a Christian who came out of a pagan lifestyle were to look at another Christian in a pagan eating meat, and they're thinking, well, there's nothing here, they're immediately going to be tempted to fall back in the worship of these pagan idols. That is causing them to stumble. And Paul says you need to be conscious of that. You need to be conscious of your brother or your sister who some of these things may be an issue. But he also talks about with the meat, that we should operate in such a way that we should elevate our witness for Christ to the greatest degree. And I mean, let me see if I can just turn there. If you look at 1 Corinthians 10, and you jump down to, you can see verses 14 all the way through 22. It says the big headlines is idol, feast, and the Lord's Supper. And so he's talking about actual worship things, right? Like you're actually doing something in the worship of you can't celebrate the table of demons and the table of the Lord, right? Like we're not just talking about eating meat, we're talking about actual worship practices here. And then you jump down to verse 23 and he says, I have the right to do anything, talking about freedom, right? I have all this freedom in Christ to do whatever I want. But then he goes down, he says, you can eat anything sold in the meat market without raising question about the conscience, for the earth is the Lord and everything in it. And he says, 27, if an unbeliever invites you to a meal and you want to go, eat whatever is put before you without raising question of conscience. But if someone says to you, hey, this has been offered in sacrifice, then do not eat it, both for the sake of the one who told you and for the sake of conscience. I'm referring to the other person's conscience, not yours, the other person's conscience. For why is my freedom being judged by another person's conscience? If I take part in the meal with thankfulness, am I being denounced? Skip down, he says, so whatever you eat or drink, do it all for the glory of God. Do not cause anyone to stumble, whether Jew or Greek or the church of God, even as I try to please everyone in every way. For I am not seeking my own good, but the good of many, so that they may be saved.
Yeah.
So for Paul, if the conscience of somebody else is flagged and you're doing things, all that's going to do is just kind of confirm their, paganism in this context. They're going to think, oh yeah, this Christian is compromising allegiance to whatever God he's believing in to practice, to join me in my worship of these demons. And Paul says, just don't do that. You need to stand your ground and represent Jesus very, very well in that context. And the reason for that is not just to be kind of a Christian who's sticking it to the man, but to be a Christian who is being effective in his witness, that there is a Lord that we're going to be accountable to and that we're called to worship alone. And so anyways, Paul's concerned about the effect our behavior is going to have on Christians whose spiritual maturity may not be great, but also the impact what we do is going to have on our witness for Christ in our community.
And so help me out here. The idea is, so one thing that this relates to, there's two things in my mind. One is you have this idea that some of the meat, let's say a piece of meat had been sacrificed to an idol, but a Christian doesn't know or isn't told. Is Paul saying that you, in not knowing, still sin by eating it?
No.
So the idea then, help me out, is this piece of meat actually, in fact, has been sacrificed to an idol by someone else. You get to the meat market, 80% of that meat was sacrificed to idol. Is that right?
I don't know the percent. I would say a majority of it came from the temple, yeah.
So let's say, even for a Christian, like, hey, there's a good chance this it has come down from the temple of Artemis. I don't know who they. So then they bring that down. It's in the meat market. I don't know what. All I know is this is ribeye. Like whatever. Yeah. I need to get one of those. So you buy it. It's gonna be a big Christian love feast. Like we're gonna go to do something good with this meat. The Christian doesn't need to worry that had been sacrificed by an idol. Is that correct? Yeah.
Paul's not worried, because he doesn't acknowledge that by eating the meat, you're actually worshiping the demon. If you pay attention to like what Paul talks about, he is focused on the other person's conscience because he wants them to be saved. So he's not saying you are somehow inadvertently worshiping the demon by doing this. He's saying you are actually hurting your effective witness to that person.
But let's say before we get to the other person, let's just stop right there. This idea of like Paul is saying, this meat that is sacrificed to an idol, you can't accidentally worship a demon by eating that meat that had been sacrificed to a demon god. That Paul is saying that first and foremost, right? So here's my case for why Halloween participation for Christians whose conscience are not harmed by Halloween is actually not a sin, because the Christian is saying, I'm not worshiping a demon. I'm getting candy. And by not participate, like, because I think there's an idea out there that a lot of Christians who get kind of superstitious about this are like, dude, if I walk by and there happens to be a really dark house, dude, that demon's on me, dude. I've opened a door. Like I'm out there. And so like I'm accidentally worshiping Satan. I don't mean to, but because I'm part of this pagan thing that I consider pagan, or I think might, basically this idea of like they think that demons are gonna like caught like a flu or something, that I don't mean to worship a demon, but if I'm around Halloween, boom, I've got it. I think that's incorrect theology.
Yeah.
Because dude, you have to purpose to sacrifice to a demon. It can't be done on accident or secondhand. The flip side of that though, so that's thing one. And that's a case for like Halloween isn't necessarily demon worship. Thing two though is we actually have to be careful when people's consciences are tender, you know?
Yeah.
Because if that person thinks this is evil, I'm worshiping a demon, then you should never pressure them ever to participate. Because that person's going like, I actually think I'd be worshiping a demon. Maybe I think a really great example of this that would be really pure and exactly like the text would be somebody who has a background in the occult or a background as a witch.
Yeah, for sure.
And they're the 0.0001% or whatever who used to actually do this unto demons. And then on Halloween night, they would do crazy stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
And then you as a Christian are like, you want to go to Halloween with me? It's like, well, no, I can't because like, dude, I used to do tarot cards and stuff. My responsibility, dude, respect that.
Yep.
Like actually chill at home, like fall back, want you watch a movie, like, but don't go out. And I'm not even going to talk about like whether or not I'm doing like, you know, Capri's dress up like Moana. Like I'm not going to bring that up with you because I know that's a huge stumbling block for you. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, I think that's good. I think it's, you know, there's a sense of wherever your conscience is, right, in participating in Halloween, there is something that you have this conviction of like, by doing that, I'm actually somehow celebrating demons and death, and you just can't go there, and you don't want your family to go there. Totally fine.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Don't. Like, you shouldn't do that.
Good,
then.
bro.
If you're looking at this going, this is just like this materialistic holiday, a communal holiday where we're just having fun, eating candy, and like walking down the street with our kids, and it doesn't mean anything deeper than that. I mean, I don't think if your conscience isn't condemning you in that, I don't see an issue with going with that, you know? But I think there needs to be grace between these two positions.
Okay, so answer this question, Pastor Skyler. How would you address the person? Like, let's say I'm like, dude, I think Halloween's bad. It's got a lot of yucky stuff. I don't want my Christian friend from church doing Halloween. And actually, because they do that, they feel loose to me. Like, they don't feel solid. And I'm actually kind of talking to my other buddy, like, hey, dude, like, I thought Bill was legit. Bill's whack, dude. Like, he celebrates Halloween, bro. I saw the princess walking down the street, bro. That's his daughter. Shame on, like, what would you say to the Christian who's more legalistic in that sense?
Wow. I would say be very, very careful. I mean, because you are taking something that I do not think, and I guess maybe you just disagree with me on this, but not necessarily, you know, Nolan, but, you know, other people. This is not a gospel thing. Don't make this a gospel law. It's not. And if you're going to be demoting someone else's faith based on something that is not to the level of the gospel and actual doctrinal importance, then you're at risk of, you know, being a legalist and being judgmental. You know, I think you need to you need to guard your heart over that. You know, and if that's an issue for you, like, just be aware of that. Like, that is just as wrong as participating in Halloween. Okay.
Wow.
So be careful of that, you know, because that's just unifying.
I might even go as far as to say that's more wrong because the person who participates in Halloween might not actually be doing anything demonic. They, in fact, 99% of them are not, you know, like they're just walking around with like a little Superman outfit.
Yeah.
But the person who is disunifying Christ's church that, by the way, he died for, the veil was torn. Like, Jesus' body was broken so that we and our relationship might be repaired not only to God, but one another. So you're separating the very church that Christ died to unify. I think divisiveness in the church is straight out demonic, more demonic than 90% of anything that takes place on Halloween.
Yeah.
Even if you're secular, right? So I would be very careful that's not the Holy Spirit if you're like condemning other Christians for things they're doing that are not unbiblical. That's wild to me.
Dude, and I would also just throw in there like Colossians 2 verse 16. Therefore, do not let anyone judge you by what you eat or drink, or with regard to a religious festival, a new moon celebration, or a Sabbath day. These are a shadow of the things to come. The reality, however, is found in Christ. You know, so I'd be careful when we're getting the holidays and we find ourselves being a little bit more judgmental to other believers.
That's good, bro. Okay, what do you do for Halloween, Pastor Skyler? Let's close it down.
I think there are 3 things that we should evaluate our practice off of: self, family, world. Self, I think we need to evaluate really closely our allegiance. Where's our allegiance? Are we, we need to evaluate if our devotion is to Christ. We also, when we think about things like Halloween, we should think about, if you have kids, you should think about this from a family standpoint. How are you discipling your kids through seeing what they're seeing?
It's good, bro.
Or not seeing what they're seeing. Like, these are good moments where you can actually have some good Bible conversations. And, if we go through Halloween, like our kids, some of them just don't like some of the dark stuff. We legitimately are going to cross to the other side and avoid you. And that has more to do with the fact that, man, it scars our kids, and our kids get freaked out by that, and they're going to have nightmares. And then we're going to be waking up as parents at like 3 a.m.
with nothing, bro.
Terrified kids. And we just don't want that. You know what I mean? So I don't think there's anything like legit happening over there. And we'll talk to our kids like, no, these are decorations. These are not demons, okay? But we need to think from family standpoint, thinking about discipleship. How are we discipling that? And even your neighborhood, right? How are you going to help other believers, have a firmer grasp in Christ than in the practices in this holiday? And then third is the world. Think about your witness. This is actually a really good opportunity to get to know your neighbors. You don't really get an excuse to go knocking on your neighbor's door.
That's good,
without them going, what in the world are you doing here?
That's good.
And you get to say, hey, I'm Skyler. I live at that house. And you get to make a contact. This is a good opportunity as believers for us actually to break the ice and get to know our neighbors. Go for it. But we need to think through our witness.
It's good, bro.
How are we actually representing Christ on this holiday?
Yeah.
We should, I don't know, wear something with, Jesus on. I don't know. Well, however you want to do that, but this, maybe you drop some Jesus candy, some spirit mints or whatever, and someone's back. I don't know what's out there.
This is crazy.
Does that even exist?
No.
Okay. Somebody's gonna make it. Anyways,
some tracks. If you give me a track on Halloween, it better have a king size candy bar right in it, dude.
There you go.
I love it, bro. So you guys kind of soft participate.
Yeah. We go trick-or-treating. Honestly, I'm a kid at heart. Like, I'm all about the candy.
What are you going
to
go as? Yeah, dad tags, dude.
So
if you're going to disciple your kids on Halloween, you better teach them about, there's 2 realities, son. You're going to face the Lord one day, and on your way there, Uncle Sam wants his cut, and I'm him today.
Yeah.
So give me half that Snickers.
Yeah.
Because taxes are crazy right now.
Yeah. That's kind of how we see it. It's an opportunity for us to meet our neighbors. It's an opportunity for us to surround ourselves with other believers to do this with. And so we're beyond this holiday, we're building relationships deeper with other believers. And we're having fun with our kids and making memories. And so for me, I'm thinking from that grid, really discipleship and witness. This is a great opportunity for believers who this is a conscious level issue. Do something else, man. Go watch football. It's fine. Use this moment as an opportunity to be a witness. Maybe you just you do put on a football game or a baseball game, and you just have an open house where people can come over and have a family-friendly environment, you know, where you're not engaging in that. Do something else, but utilize this moment for the kingdom.
Yeah, that's good, dude. Same grid, self. How I think about it for me is my allegiance is with Christ, like always has been. And so anything that I look at from Halloween or any other day is like through the perspective of like the gospel. Like, what does King Jesus want me to do with this? Family, like I'm always discipling my kids. We've raised really tough kids. And part of that is I think some of them may become church planters and missionaries, and that's tough. And so we're a little bit more on the like, and I'm not saying this should be you, but Janes are in danger. Janes are the danger, bro. Like we're dangerous. And so we've really tried to raise tough kids. And so like when we see those things at Home Depot, we're like, what do you think of that? And he's like, like, all right, dude, well done. So I'm pretty, we look at it as an opportunity. Like we go around, look at little Halloween things in our neighborhood, and our kids ask questions like, are ghosts real? And be like, what do you think? Like, oh, I don't think so. Why not? Like, well, it's not in the Bible, right? You know, like we have biblical. I love what you said earlier, that there's this supernatural, like this cultural imaginary, as Carl Truman would call it, a social imaginary in our culture is like, there are no demons. There are no spiritual, so we can make fun of it. And our kids are going like, no, there are demons, but there's not ghosts, and there are angels, and there is a God, and he's the king. And so we just have a lot of conversations like that. And I partly love Halloween. I don't love every element, as I've said, but I partly love it because it gets us talking as a family. I love all stuff like that. Baseball games, I love talking about it. Like, did you notice that guy, like, can you have a beer as a Christian? Well, you could. Okay, why? Because the Bible doesn't, Jesus drank wine. Okay, well, what about the guy next to us who had 17? It's like, well, yeah, he scared me, Dad. You know, like we talk about everything. So we're raising pretty resilient kids, and it's discipleship conversations constantly. And then, yeah, I love that concept of the world. Like, how are we representing as witnesses Christ to the world? And like, man, I actually find that those couple years as a kid when it's like I wasn't even going to church, and no shade on my mom. Like my mom really did try to disciple me. I was just a jerk. And so ended up atheist, but we weren't really plugged into a church at that time. And yet we're not allowed to celebrate Halloween. And there was something confusing about that. And for us, we want our kids out there and connected to the community rather than feeling scared and alone and like disconnected from the culture. We want them out there and to know like, hey, here's what we believe. So my son Ollie is like Mr. Evangelist, tells everybody about church and Jesus. And we love for them. Our two littlest, they were in COVID lockdown for 2 full years in Portland. We hated it. And they actually were held back from some of their social potential because of those demonic 2 years. And so for us, we want them exposed to the community, exposed to people, connected in relationships. We're going to try to go trick-or-treating with a bunch of friends, you know, like we want friends there. We want to go on walks. We want everybody invited. We have a party at our house sometimes, like for these kinds of holidays. And so we want to invite people into that. We're not doing demons, but we are going to have some fun. And so like, it's an opportunity for our kids to grow as relational people, and to ultimately with the goal of, look, they're not little witnesses right now yet. Yeah. I don't believe that I'm going to send my kids on mission into the world without first modeling it and walking them to that, but into that relational skill set. And so, yeah, like we love meeting the neighbors. We love connecting with people. And low key, I actually think Halloween's like kind of a cool way to do that. I always look at it as a witness thing. And I'll end with a story. My last church, we actually, I don't know, like nobody at that church and nobody really, I really didn't even start thinking about Halloween this deeply till moving here, because I met more Christians that were like, it's from Satan. I'm like, it's Satan's birthday? What? I didn't know that. Like, I just was like eating like gushers, dude. And one of the things that we did back in Portland was in my old neighborhood called Fairview. It was at the time one of the hottest spots for Halloween. And we would set up like a photo booth because here's the thing, everybody's coming in with their outfits, no family photo. So we were like, my senior pastor there was genius, bro. He's like, set up a photo booth. We did lights, we did sound, we did music. It was the best. So hundreds of people would come, and we would get this you could get your photo at our website for the church. And there was an invite, dude.
Wow.
Missional connection, baby. People got saved, and on their little deal, they'd be like, Connect card, like, I found out about this church through the Halloween event. Now, no demons, but we gave candy. It was fun, dude. It was hype. So anyways, there I am. There's us. Love you guys. Thanks for watching this, Skeptics and Saints. If you made it this far, make sure and subscribe. Like, what are you doing if you're not subscribed? We'll see you next time.